This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
The biggest icon in podcasting.
Welcome in, everybody, to another episode of the DocNJock Wrestling Podcast. This is episode 140. I'm your host, Adam the Jock Strozinski. On today's episode, Vince McMahon sees a new Shawn Michaels with this wrestler. Enzo Amore is doing some things that most porn stars do, as well as what's going on with SummerSlam and where's that getting moved to, and what's been going on with Rey Mysterio, his contract, and WWE. Of course, we're going to talk about the latest topics and trends, and doing it with me as always. He's the one. He's the only. He's an eye for an eye kind of guy. He is the Doc, John Macaroon. What's up, cuz?
The Masked Bandit, the real FTW champion, talking to everybody here via the Detroit Sports Podcast. Can't wait to break down the week of professional wrestling. Look, if we complain about Taz, he's like, I heard all you marks. I heard all you complainers. You thought I'm part of the show? I'll just bring back my own belt and give it to somebody. So I can't wait to break down AEW, new champions, two good shows on Wednesday. I guess the thing that caught my attention was Raw was good, but I just felt like it was really weird when you look at the show opening and having Heath Slater, a guy that's going to show up at another company potentially, and you have him basically get destroyed. If you're Heath Slater, are you that hard up for TV time that you're just like, the boss calls, and you're like, sure, I'll show up on Raw and I'll get squashed? I don't get it. You got let go. You got some other things bumping. It didn't make much sense. I mean, it made storyline sense in terms of the relationship that he had with Drew McIntyre, but put the chapter to bed, bro. Heath Slater, go do your own thing. I don't get the favor. Maybe they said, look, we'll drop you a $10,000 check. It just reeks of a guy that needed the money really bad and took a check to really diminish his character on his way out. I thought it was just crazy. And it kind of turned me off to Monday Night Raw in terms of the whole week. I loved Wednesday. The rest, SmackDown, Raw, didn't really leave a mark for me.
I think both Raw and SmackDown were kind of weak, but I think Heath Slater specifically, remember, he's got kids. He needs that money.
Yeah. Needs that dough, right?
But look, I think Heath Slater utilized this as an opportunity to help get himself over. Heath Slater looks like he's in fantastic shape. This is probably the best shape Heath Slater's been in years. He looks amazing. He cut a great promo. Like, I wanted Heath Slater to stay there. I wanted him to back up Drew McIntyre. I wanted him to be a part of the WWE roster again. And he shows up on Monday Night Raw 12 days before he's going to appear on Impact. I think it was a way to pump up his own name. And I think what happened was WWE threw him a line. He said, cool, I'll take that. I'll take that payday. And watch me pump up and build up my name when I go to another company. I thought it was really cool. I thought it was a little bit weird for him to come in and totally get obliterated like he did.
Right.
But I think he used it as a moment to help build his name and show that he can do other things. Because you have to remember, Heath Slater's been, for the most part, a comedy act. You know, I mean, the whole he's got kids thing, which I think was great and funny. His whole referee bit was quality, but again, it was funny. He's never really had a serious wrestling character. He's never been a serious contender. He's always been that mid-card jobber, and I think what you got here was you got a guy who shows he's got a little bit more in his wrestling chops, and I thought it was quality for him to do it, and then, you know, in less than 2 weeks, he'll be over on Impact doing some big things, so I liked it a lot.
See, for me, it just doesn't hit a mark for me where you play the whole you're a bad friend angle. It's like, okay, when Drew got released, Heath Slater made a bunch of phone calls, and then when Heath gets released, Drew wasn't there. Well, yeah, he's the freaking world champion, or he's on his way to doing some big things. He ain't got time for you. So that whole bit, I don't like the whole I'm mad at you because you're not a good friend kind of motif. I would have rather went with the whole jealousy angle. I thought that would have been much better. Like, look, this is something you didn't deserve. I deserve this. I worked harder. I'm better than you. I think that plays better to me as a fan than, oh, you're not a good friend and you're a bad guy. It's like, come on, dude. Don't play to 12-year-olds. You do have an audience of grown men here also watching. And I think that many people would respect Heath Slater more for the jealousy angle than he would for the you're a bad friend angle. And yeah, he got squashed, which was, I mean, you could at least give him a couple more movesets. So in my mind, that whole thing missed the mark. But it's nice to see Dolph Ziggler a little bit in the mix. And I like the way Drew and Heath at least got into it a little bit. And for me, you always look for things that could be better. And in a ratings war, when you're looking to draw eyes, you can't really miss the mark. And I thought they missed the mark with Heath Slater. And like you said, I felt like they missed the mark with Raw and SmackDown in terms of some of the angles and some of the things that they tried to pull off. It just wasn't as great as what Wednesday gave us.
So you're more of a fan of the Dolph Ziggler angle than the Heath Slater angle. Are you more of a fan of this new U.S. Championship belt or the old one? Because I absolutely fell in love with MVP's, we're going to give it to him, his redesign of the U.S. Championship belt.
Yeah, I liked it. I've also seen photos of the old WCW United States title. That one, I'm surprised hasn't made a real solid comeback. But yeah, MVP's belt was real nice. I thought it was something real cool. And his whole angle of like, I'm the champ now was very cool. And so it's nice to see MVP get a nice little resurgence and a nice little push. It's well deserved. And that belt looks cool. I think it'll play nicely to the combatants that are going to be fighting for it.
So we both agreed that Wednesday was probably the better night of wrestling, and specifically I think one brand over the other. But before we transition to Wednesday night, I want to ask you, who do you think is the most important character on either Monday Night Raw or SmackDown at this moment right now?
That's such good things, too. That's a good question. Both sides have really good performers that are ready to take the next step. I like Baron Corbin as the heel. I like AJ Styles. But in my mind, still, the guy that's most important is the guy with the belt, and that's Drew McIntyre. I think that he's doing a decent job. I think that he's showing that he's able to carry the show when he's on. At least you at least want to pay attention. If it's not Drew McIntyre, I think the next guy that you can make the argument for is Randy Orton, because everything he's touching is intriguing, it's interesting, it's fresh, and it's moving in a direction that I think would appeal to a lot of different people. And so if it's not Drew McIntyre, for some, it's got to be Randy Orton 1 and 1A.
So I don't mind those picks, but I think you're right. It is a guy with the belt. He doesn't actually own this belt right now because it's Apollo Crews's, but I think MVP is probably the most important character right now on Monday Night Raw and SmackDown for that matter. And the reason for that is I just think he has the more interesting segments. All of a sudden, you care about Bobby Lashley. All of a sudden, you care about guys like Cedric Alexander, Ricochet. We haven't seen Ricochet in forever. He's been on the side of a milk carton. That was the last time you seen him. You all of a sudden care about what's going on with Apollo Crews, and you start to wonder with the way some of these segments are getting drawn out and the way these segments are playing out, is MVP going to really build his stable? Is he going to be able to bring in guys like a Cedric Alexander? Will Apollo flip and join his crew? Does Ricochet be the guy in that trio who maybe flips on the other two? What's going to happen? Where does Bobby Lashley go? Like, this is the most important Bobby Lashley has been since probably his re-debut on Monday Night Raw. I mean, Bobby Lashley gets tons of television time right now, and he's taking full advantage of it. I think MVP is probably the most important character right now.
I got to ask you this then. I'm going to ask you to put your money where your mouth is. Is MVP a better potential manager than Taz? Who's the better manager? The
whole point of the manager is to get your talent over, hey? I think you noticed something very astutely last week, and I think you made a very good assessment. I think Taz does a great job of getting Taz over. I think MVP does a great job of getting everybody else over. So I think MVP is probably the better manager.
Exactly. And that's what you're seeing is that the manager that has experience, that can talk, that can build up the stable, like you care, I care. It was great because, look, when you heard that tick-tock at the Royal Rumble, we all got excited because MVP was a guy that was just a short 18 months ago was wrestling in Novi at an indie show run by a guy that was trying to start something, and MVP showed up. So now he's come all the way back from the indies all the way back to the big show, and his segments are important, and you've got him now ranked as one of the most important characters on a national highlighted show on Monday Night Raw and on SmackDown. So kudos to MVP. He's taking full advantage of his last opportunity with WWE, and good for him. He's a character that's interesting and is always maybe taking advantage of the times. But hell, if the times present it, take advantage. And if you're going to get some airtime, create you a stable, and let's see what happens.
Absolutely, absolutely. So Wednesday, we talked about it. Wednesday had some great wrestling. I think NXT underdelivered compared to AEW. But I think the main event, the Adam Cole versus Keith Lee match, I thought was epic. I thought it was a fantastic match. I knew Keith Lee was going to win this match going into it because they had just debuted the U.S. Championship belt on Monday. And when Adam Cole came out with the NXT title, if you go back a couple podcasts, we talked about them revamping that NXT belt. So I'm like, this is the prime opportunity. Keith Lee's going to get that revamped belt. It's a brand new way to kind of show his new belt off. What did you think of the Adam Cole versus Keith Lee match? Because I thought it was explosive. I thought both guys got all their work in. I thought it helped establish Keith Lee as the face of NXT. And I thought it was a great way for Adam Cole to go out because Adam Cole threw everything he had at Keith Lee. And Keith Lee is just too big of a man. And Adam Cole ends up faltering in the end to Keith Lee.
Absolutely. And so the way my watching went was I had the opportunity to spend 2 hours. I watched AEW, and I was impressed with the show up until the main event. I was like, okay, I'm geeked for Chris Jericho match against Orange Cassidy. And the match was good, but then I just like, it left me wanting something. Okay, Chris Jericho gets over, and it just kind of ended real quick with boom, he hits his finishing move, and the back elbow, and boom, the match is over. And it was good, but it just didn't leave the impression. So then I DVR'd NXT and was like, okay, it's good. I'm like, well, if this is going up against AEW, the card beforehand, the matches weren't as good. But then you said it. The main event, Adam Cole and Keith Lee, was like a nice epic battle. It had the intrigue that kept you going, ooh, could Adam Cole actually win this? Got his stuff in. And then Keith Lee, you just have to marvel at a man that big, he matches up with Brock Lesnar. A man that big that is so athletic that can move around a ring that flawlessly. And for him to get the win, I just thought was definitely the right move, the right call. And it was a better wrestling match. Like you said, it was the perfect counter move in my mind. And so for me, because I give weight more toward a main event, I exactly wrote in my notes, NXT show was better. And NXT show was better because the main event was intriguing. You built a star. And now we're going to see a brand new character now in Keith Lee dominate in NXT. Whereas AEW, yeah, it was great to see Chris Jericho win, but it would have been a nice move potentially to give it to Orange Cassidy and create a new star. So I know they're taking it slow with Cassidy, but I just felt like, okay, it was good to see Jericho win. It was good. You understand. We kind of knew it, but in the moment, it would have been nice if they would have pulled a swerve. I thought the main event of NXT was awesome.
Yeah, I thought the main event of NXT was fantastic. Not enough for me to give it the nod over AEW. I thought AEW's complete show, including the main event, and I've got some issues with the main event, I thought AEW's total show was more entertaining and more engaging. So the way I took in Wednesday night, I had watched NXT first. I had DVR'd AEW. This was at the end of a very long day. So by the time I got around to watching NXT and getting finished with it, it was like 10:15. So then I had to spend another roughly 2 hours watching AEW, fast forwarding through commercials, and I still found AEW at the back end of my day to be much more entertaining than what I got with NXT. I thought you had fantastic matches like the FTR, Young Bucks, Blade and the Butcher, and Lucha Brothers match. I thought that was fantastic. I thought the introduction of Taz's FTW championship belt, I thought that was fun. I thought that was an interesting, weird little off segment. I thought the Kenny Omega, Hangman Page private party match, I have issues with Hangman Page and Kenny Omega, but I thought private party looked like they belonged. The one thing I took out of that match was you have two really young competitors who look like they have the makings to be fantastic wrestlers, and they just did it with a guy who 2 years ago was best in the world, and they did it with a guy who is arguably that next up-and-coming guy who's going to be the world champion of AEW. So I thought AEW's Fyter Fest Day number 2 was better than NXT's Great American Bash Day 2. I do have a question for you, though, regarding Kenny Omega and Hangman Page. Do you feel like they have overstayed their welcome as tag team champs? Now, they've been holding the tag team titles in AEW for quite some time, and AEW, I think, has better tag team wrestling than either NXT or Raw or Smackdown. I think there's a ton of other real tag teams, I'm going to use the term real tag teams, that should probably be holding on to those championship belts, and not necessarily a guy like Kenny Omega, who's a fantastic singles competitor, working through a torn labrum right now, or a fantastic singles competitor like Hangman Page, who, like we had mentioned just previously, is that next up-and-coming guy. So is it time for them to drop those belts and move on to something else, something bigger and better?
No, because I think a nice, healthy, long title reign gives the belt credibility, and it gives the tag team division something to strive for. And I think also, too, it helps to get Omega and Hangman a little bit over, so it cements them as solid wrestlers. And so for me, a nice tag team reign in AEW, where they're known for quality tag team wrestling, I think elevates everybody involved, those that are chasing, the champions, and it'll make the inevitable title change that much more special. Remember that we've gotten conditioned in WWE to basically go through title holders once every 2 months, every 50, 60 days. Someone really is changing it. That's why, if you recall, you and I were so hardcore on AJ Styles because he kept the world title for over a year. And it was a beautiful run that he deserved to have in WWE in a time when you haven't seen it that much. And so for me, the tag titles being on Omega and Hangman are fine. I think potentially when they do end up splitting and losing the belt, they should probably feud with each other. I think that is inevitable. I think it's pretty much a certainty at this point. And I think that it would make for a great feud if they drop the belts, maybe to FTR, Young Bucks, and then have a nice, healthy singles run against each other.
Yeah, I think the way for it all to kind of culminate is for those guys to go head-to-head against each other. I just think it makes all the sense in the world. I just feel like at this point, and it's not so much because of the preconditioning for Monday Night Raw or anything that WWE does, it's more a thing of, okay, you guys have had these belts for a while. I don't really feel like you need belts to be competitive. I don't really feel like you guys need belts to help get yourself over. I don't feel like you guys need the belts to, I don't know, I just feel like it could be utilized differently. I feel like there's a different, better way, and I feel like at some point, somebody else needs to get that run and needs to get that love. Look, nothing against those guys. I think they're fantastic. I'm looking for something new, something better. Something old that was awesome to see was Taz bring his Fuck the World Championship belt from his time when he was in ECW. What did you mark out for this? Because I marked out hardcore. I popped super hard.
I liked it. I enjoyed it. It brought back the memories of ECW, FTW, and everything like that. So, and Brian Cage, I'm not going to lie, looks good with a belt. And I think that Taz with him, while yes, we did notice both of us that potentially Taz is trying to get himself over with his old stuff. It's cool. It's like nostalgia. And Taz, for all the shortcomings that he has in terms of getting himself over, I like the pairing. I like the pairing of Taz with Brian Cage. And whatever this story evolves, Taz is a guy that can talk, and it's a nice role for him. Now, should he be pumping himself up less? Certainly. And I think that where this goes, I think it's interesting where, an old belt like FTW kind of gives Brian Cage a little bit more legitimacy. Like, look, this guy with the belt looks the part. This is a real champ. This is a real man. And now it's technically FTW champ versus the AEW champ. And it makes for a little bit where, you might have been lacking in story. So now you just put a belt on him, and it kind of supercharges it just enough to where you're like, all right, belt for Brian Cage is going to take on the champion next Wednesday at Fight for the Fallen. Let's see what happens. And anytime you get a chance to see Taz, it's a wonderful opportunity because of everybody that marked out for ECW and when he debuted in WWE. I like Taz being in the role. We can just fine tune it a little bit to make it pop.
So do you think that if Jon Moxley beats Brian Cage, does he get to take the FTW championship then? Is that how that works?
No, absolutely not.
Oh, okay. So that's Brian Cage's belt all day.
It's Brian Cage's belt all day. He never gets to lose it, and he never gets to defend it. He just gets to have it as a nice piece. He's the champ, and that's it.
It's just a prop.
It's just a prop.
That's great.
He's the 5-year FTW champ. And I think that'd be funny down the road where someone's like, "Are you ever going to defend it?" And they're like, "No."
And he's like, "No, never. We're never defending this.
We're never defending it.
Oh,
mine.
Man.
I created it. Kind of like the $1 Million belt. Don't we need one of those where like someone just has like their own little signature thing that they created and they're like, "Fine, you're not going to give me an opportunity. I'm my own champ."
What did you think about that 8-man tag match between FTR, the Young Bucks, Blade and Butcher, and the Lucha Brothers? Because I was blown away by it. It was a chaotic match, to put it mildly. It was, you had guys who did completely different things, and they all got to get all their work in. I thought it was a really fun match, and I think it sets up nicely for FTR versus the Young Bucks.
I can't wait to see it, yes. So my notes on it as I'm reading them are, wild match expected, but holy cow, can these guys deliver. And it's so awesome in tag team wrestling when you get these guys that are willing to do these crazy spots, and they're willing to put together matches like that. And I was just impressed with FTR because I was really looking at them. Man, I'm really surprised WWE underutilized them because they just looked the part. They got their tags crisp. They work together. They understand the use of the ring properly. I just was looking at them and I'm like, how could you give these guys the belts and then eventually down the road you misuse them and have these guys shave each other's backs? I mean, come on. These are great wrestlers that could have been highlighted for a long time. They were worthy of a nice 6-month run with the belt or a year run and have some great epic matches. But again, what AEW does, and if you look at it, the smaller wrestlers don't tend to look as small in AEW. Yes, the manner in which we know that these guys are not as big as Gallows and Anderson, but the way in which AEW shot and the manner in which the ring is set up and the production, you don't ever really feel like, okay, the Lucha Brothers are small. You don't feel like FTR is small. They just look the part and they're able to go out there and handle their business. So for me, I was impressed. I loved the spots. I loved just the craziness and the unpredictability of that match. It's great when you expect something and then they over-deliver.
So I thought it was a great match. And I think specifically with FTR, I think they're very, very good. And I think they were underutilized in WWE. But let me ask you this. Do you know which one is Cash Wilder and which one's Dax Harwood? Because like
right?
Here's the problem. This is my issue with them. I think they're a very good tag team, but I think they are so synonymous with each other that it's confusing to know which one is which. You knew who Shawn Michaels was. You knew who Marty Jannetty was in the Rockers. You knew who Luke Gallows was, and you knew who Carl Anderson was. And like, I don't even think Gallows and Anderson were a great tag team in WWE. I thought they were fantastic in New Japan, but they weren't crap here. I don't think that they do a good enough job separating each other. I think they are essentially the same person. They are so symbiotic with each other that they are basically the same dude. And I think that's a little bit of a problem.
No, isn't Dash the guy with hair and the other guy's not?
I don't know. I can't tell you. I can't tell you. I was legitimately asking you a question. I don't know.
Oh.
I can't tell you. I'm not 100% sure.
Now you're going to send me looking. That's funny, too. You know? Dash is Dash and Wilder, you know? That's funny as hell, man. It's true.
So, look, I want to talk about this main event, and you touched on a little bit, the Chris Jericho Orange Cassidy match. I thought Orange Cassidy looked very good in this match, but overall, I did have problems with this match. I thought it was very boring. I love Chris Jericho. He's my all-time favorite wrestler. I love what Orange Cassidy brings, and I thought he held up his own. And I'm not putting this match on Jericho. I just felt like overall, this was an extremely boring match, and it did not hold my interest. I thought what I got from NXT was much, much better. I thought this match specifically failed to deliver on a card that was outstanding and totally outpaced and outworked Fyter Fest day one and outworked and outpaced anything that NXT gave us over the previous 2 nights. For some reason, this match just did not hit the spot, and I can't put my finger on why. I'm wondering what you thought.
Yeah, exactly. I just thought that there was a lack of chemistry. There was a lack of intrigue as to what was going on, and I was just surprised that Cassidy and Jericho would put together that kind of match. And it was a big letdown. That's why I thought the AEW show was excellent, excelling, and then the main event just brought it really down. I don't think it was boring. It just lacked something like of intrigue. I guess you just say that it kind of just felt like it should have felt, I think maybe the expectation was we would get like a pay-per-view level, false finishes, craziness, and something more than what we got. And it just felt like a main event TV show as opposed to a high-level marquee like, hey, this is the top fight. Because the main event should always steal the show. And we felt like, I think you and I can agree that match didn't steal the show. That match wasn't even the best show of the 2 nights. So you look at it and you go, wow, with the build-up, the match, and we've said it in previous podcasts, the match has to deliver to get the payoff. And when it doesn't, and there's a mismatch or there's something that doesn't keep it intriguing, it's a letdown. but the right guy went over in Chris Jericho, but I just don't think that the intended purpose of making Orange Cassidy a star was accomplished, and it left a lot of people, I think, that saw that were not impressed, and I'm not exactly sure why. What could have been done better? Should have just had like maybe more of a Randy Orton and Edge feel where there was a lot of false finishes, a lot of belief that maybe Orange could win it. Did it need a swerve? Did they need some more aggression? What did it need in your mind?
So for me, I really felt like there was a time there where I didn't feel like Orange Cassidy had any shot in hell to winning this match. And then probably with 5 or 6 minutes left, there were a couple near falls, and I was like, okay, cool. He's got a legit shot, and they had me hooked. They did. They had me hooked. I was looking at the time. I'm like, he's going to win this. He's going to freaking win this. And then he didn't win it. And I don't think it was so much it needed more false finishes. I don't think it needed to get me hooked more than it did because I bought in. I just was left wanting more out of this match. And I don't know if it was because there was a lot of stuff that ended up taking place on the outside of the ring. I don't think enough stuff really took place inside of the ring. I think the one thing Orange Cassidy does really, really well is he sells that sloth character where he's not going to move, he's not going to do anything, and then all of a sudden, it's like a shock of lightning, and it's just a burst of energy throughout the entire crowd where he fires up, and he's doing some pretty awesome stuff off the ring ropes. And I don't really feel like we got that in this match, and maybe that's what was lacking for me, but I can't put my finger on it. I'm struggling to try to figure out why this match failed to deliver to my expectations. And maybe it's just that. Maybe it was just my expectations were too high, and for some reason it just kind of came in pretty limp for me. I don't know. I don't have an answer.
Do we need to see it again? Should they give it another whirl?
I mean, I think what you're going to get is there's probably going to be another one, but I don't need to see that match again. I need to see something different. I want something different because I was left bored.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not the way you want to end such a quality show at the end of the show. And it's just like, man, main event's supposed to be the match that steals the show. And if you're going to have that match, if that was put together that way, I think then it probably should have opened the show, because then the FTR tag team match could have ended the show on a bang with all the craziness that was going on there. And sometimes too, matches they suffer based on where they are in the card. And after 2 hours, I think maybe you and I also had some fatigue because we were up and down with all the other stuff that we saw, that by the time that we got to Chris Jericho, we wanted to be even thrilled even more, and it just failed to deliver. But hey, they got to keep it moving. And next week we're going to pay attention to AEW. You're going to get Jon Moxley versus Brian Cage at Fight for the Fallen on Wednesday, and it's going to be an unbelievable card. All right, cuz, hit me with this week's professional wrestling news and notes. What caught your attention this week?
So a ton of stuff going on this week with the news and notes segment. Pro Wrestling Sheets is reporting that more testing has been done in WWE last week after multiple people who had been at the Performance Center tested positive for COVID-19. There have been at least 30 people in total at the Performance Center who have been tested positive for the virus over the past 3 weeks. That number's probably closer to 40 according to Dave Meltzer. This includes behind-the-scenes workers and in-ring talent. Now, if you've been watching, you'll notice that everybody around the ring are now wearing face masks. And that's because the company has instituted an official face mask policy at the tapings to make sure everyone in attendance wears them at the Performance Center. So those who aren't wearing face masks will be fined $500 for the very first violation and then $1,000 thereafter. Now, Dave Meltzer of the Wrestling Observer also reports Rey Mysterio has been working on his recent storyline with Seth Rollins without a WWE contract. Mysterio has been in a month-long feud with Rollins and has also involved his son Dominic, who has been in the ongoing fixture at the WWE television tapings despite not working through the Performance Center or NXT. It doesn't sound like Rey is currently willing to sign a new deal either. I ended up reading an article today that says Rey Mysterio asked for a pay raise. WWE said no. So at this time, they're basically working on a per-show, per diem for Rey Mysterio. It doesn't sound like Rey Mysterio is going to end up going anywhere. It sounds like he will probably re-sign. It's just one of those things where you just got done firing a ton of people. It's a way for Vince McMahon to keep all the cash close to the vest. Now, WWE will reportedly move this year's SummerSlam pay-per-view from Boston to the Performance Center in Orlando. Mike Johnson of PW Insider reported the change of plans, which was long expected after Boston Mayor Marty Walsh announced an extension of the ban on large gatherings in the city throughout the end of summer. SummerSlam was slated to take place on August 23rd at Boston's TD Garden. Jake Hager was suspended 10 days and fined an undisclosed amount after striking an official last Wednesday. That was announced by AEW late on Thursday. We missed that in last week's recording. This week, they have suspended Big Swole for attacking and trying to kidnap Britt Baker, so she has now been suspended as well. Enzo Amore. You remember Enzo Amore? Sure you do. Enzo is now selling wrestling lessons on his OnlyFans site. Now, OnlyFans, if you are a fan of Instagram or whatever, you can usually swipe up, and if you pay some money, you can usually see a chick do something nasty. Maybe you get a boob, maybe you get a cooch shot, maybe you get a naked butt, maybe you get her doing some other things. Anyways, you can go to OnlyFans. Enzo Amore has his own OnlyFans site. It's onlyfans.com/real1. You can go check him out. He's going to give you wrestling lessons. I could not find a price for these so-called wrestling lessons, but if anybody signs up for Enzo Amore's OnlyFans site and gets wrestling lessons, let us know how much at Detroit Podcast and at Adam R. STROZ on Twitter. Please, we're begging you. It's being reported by WrestlingNews.co that Vince is very high on this new Smackdown superstar. Matt Riddle is the guy that he sees a new Shawn Michaels in. Vince was apparently a big fan of Riddle's promo this past week, in which he claimed the reason he didn't wear shoes to the ring was due to getting frostbite when he was younger. Vince enjoyed it so much that he'll be giving Riddle more creative input in his future promos as a result. And that's what I got for this week's Wrestling News and Notes, my friend.
Make sure you follow Adam on Twitter, like he said previously, at AdamRSTROZ. Follow the network at Detroit Podcast. If you're watching along these shows, feel free, hit us up. We're watching Raw, SmackDown, AEW, NXT, pay-per-views. Feel free, let us know if you agreed or disagreed with anything. If you liked the AEW main event, let us know. If you're a big Chris Jericho fan and you felt like we're disrespecting one of the all-time greats, let us know. Adam and I, we're open to debate. We love wrestling. We love talking with the fans. And that's what makes it fun, is that when you have differing opinions, it makes it fun to debate storylines, who should be the champ, who should not be the champ, creative direction. Who is Vince spotlighting? Who is Tony Khan spotlighting? It's great. Who's going to show up on Impact? It's good stuff going on right now in the world of professional wrestling. Even though there's no fans, the world of professional wrestling always gives us great things to talk about each and every Friday on the DocNJock Wrestling Podcast. Make sure you subscribe to the Detroit Sports Podcast. All you got to do is go to wherever your favorite podcast is located. Search these three words, Detroit Sports Podcast. And when you hit that subscribe button, our content every single day will find you. You don't got to do anything extra. You'll get great content talking about Michigan football, Doc and Jock. Adam and Brendan are reliving the 2012 Detroit Lions season with the throwback. Adam and Brendan also hang out and have a great weekly podcast called The Practice Squad, where you get an intimate, sometimes TMI look at Adam and Brendan's life. It's a real good listen. I listen every single week. And that's why our network is great, because we have great podcast content each and every day on the Detroit Sports Podcast Network. Look forward to talking to you next week, cuz.
You too, cuz. Be good.